Alright, here we go. I figured out from the first time around, every time I move that mouse around, it kind of goes crazy. So I'm trying to go slow. You need to label the North Sea on your map. You'll see it's up between the UK and Norway. And so far my mouse hasn't popped up. There it goes. So that should be circled in yellow, the North Sea. You're going to find out later on that this is where a lot of the oil in Europe is in the North Sea. You need to label the Atlantic Ocean. Hopefully you know where that one is. Okay. You need to label the Baltic Sea again. We labeled it when we were in Russia. These are the republics of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania beside it. Come on, mouse. You can do it. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. This is that little bitty piece of Russia that's Kaliningrad. If you remember, you read that article last week about Kaliningrad and some of the issues with that piece of land. Black Sea will not be able to see on your map. You need to label the Aegean Sea, which is right down here by Greece. Okay, spelled A-E-G-E-A-N. You need to label the Adriatic Sea on the eastern coast of Italy. We're not going to label the Tyrrhenian Sea on the western coast of Italy. Bay of Biscay we used to label. We're not going to do that anymore. You do need to label the Strait of Gibraltar, which is this little bitty tiny piece of water right here. You would think, based on where it is, it would probably be controlled by Spain or maybe Morocco, these two countries that are right next to the Strait of Gibraltar. But like all good places want to be able to control, example, what ships in and out of this location. And so the Strait of Gibraltar is actually controlled by the UK. Dardanelles Strait, we're going to learn about when we get to Southwest Asia, another important strait choke point, which we haven't learned about yet. Arctic Ocean you won't label. English Channel you will. Label right here. It's a body of water between the UK and France and the Netherlands. On my bucket list, one of the things I really want to do, if I can convince somebody to go with me, is I want to ride the Channel. That's the train that they dug up underneath the English Channel because the English Channel is not very deep, and ride the Channel from London to Paris. Okay. That should be all the water that you need on that map. You need to take a look again, make sure you've got everything in the right spot. You are again going to color this map, so you're going to shade all the water blue so that you can see where everything is. Okay, you're about to watch a video on Greece. It doesn't last very long. Well, it does last 5 minutes, but most of it's about the Spartans. So go ahead and switch back to your notes really quickly. Alright, the Greece video will start here in a couple of seconds. You do need to know that for some reason when this downloads, sometimes it doesn't record the first part about the geography of Greece. If you've never seen pictures of Greece, it's very rocky. Greece has a ton of islands. In fact, over 1,400 islands make up the nation of Greece. It's not uncommon to hear that somebody might own an island in Greece. Like I said, they're very rugged. They're kind of rocky. They don't grow things very well, at least in southern portions of it. And if you've ever seen movies like Mamma Mia, it gives you a really good indication of what those may look like. The water's beautiful. They don't have a lot of natural resources, which may explain some of their issues today. So here you go.
Around the 8th century BC, the Peloponnesus region in southern Greece was invaded by soldiers from the north. These invaders established a new city, Sparta, and their neighbors soon came to fear them. Sparta's warriors were so fierce, the city didn't need walls for protection. Other nations wanted Peloponnesus, a fertile valley sheltered by mountains. The threat of invasion from the Persian Empire and others was constant. Forever under the cloud of war, Sparta was an armed camp. Soldiers were the ruling class. At birth, a boy's strength and health were assessed. Those deemed weak were abandoned in the mountains. Those judged fit were taken from their mothers at age 7 to begin military training. 20, he was made a soldier and joined a platoon. At 30, he could marry, as long as he remained devoted to affairs of state and the art of war. He could not farm or trade. These jobs were left to the slave class, known as helots, and lesser citizens, called freemen.
Sorry, this may pick
At
back up.
60, a soldier finally retired, and a younger man took his place in the platoon. Sparta's single-minded devotion to war produced an army that could out-drill, out-march, and out-fight anyone. By the 6th century BC, Sparta was the dominant city in Greece on the strength of its brute force alone. Spartans fought in small, mobile platoons of fewer than 24 men. In battle, a Spartan warrior armored his torso with a bronze breastplate called a cuirass. His shins were also guarded by bronze. Strapped to his chest was an iron sword with a curved blade. A crested bronze helmet that exposed only his eyes protected his head. As an army, the Spartans used a new fighting strategy called a phalanx. Their phalanx was a massive formation of soldiers protected with shields. The right side of each man was protected by the shield of the man to his left. Sparta produced soldiers who could endure any hardship and confront death without fear. The term Spartan became synonymous with self-discipline and self-restraint. But centuries of fighting took their toll on Sparta. Costly wars with Persia, Athens, and Thebes eventually weakened the city. In the 4th century BC, Philip II of Macedon, father to Alexander the Great, conquered the region as part of his campaign to become master of Greece. By the 2nd century BC, Sparta was nothing more than a Roman province.
Hopefully you got all the answers in the Grease video. If you ever see movies like 300, it does a really good job of at least one thing showing what a phalanx really would work like. Not really a fan myself. I know some guys are, they love it. But you know that the Mediterranean, you can kind of see from this picture, is very important in terms of trade. That was the reason why the Greeks, the Spartans, the Trojans, all these people were so successful, because they were successfully navigating the sea. Okay? Just picture the Strait of Gibraltar. You can kind of see it. There's actually a huge rock where the Strait of Gibraltar is as well. Okay? Rivers is probably the hardest thing to label on this entire map. So try and follow along as we go. First river up is going to be the Danube River. If you look on your map, here's Italy. These are the Alps that run this direction. Right above the Alps, or actually running through the Alps, is the country of Switzerland. The Danube River, which is the first river, actually starts in the Alps, and it runs this direction as it goes through Europe. Okay, it runs through a lot of countries. You can see it forms the border of some countries. It actually, you won't see the end of it on your map because it exits or dumps into the Black Sea. Okay. Second river on your map is the Rhine. These two are probably the two most important rivers in Europe in terms of being navigable. A lot of goods are traded up and down these rivers. The Rhine, just like the Danube, if I can get my mouse to show up, starts in the Alps, pretty close to where you were before. So if you're not not familiar with the countries in Europe quite yet, and you need to kind of have a visual representation. Here's Lisbon, Portugal. Here is Spain. Here's France. Okay, the Rhine forms a portion of the border of France, and this is Germany. So most of the Rhine flows through Germany. So it starts in the Alps and flows north and empties into the North Sea. So that's the Rhine. Okay, next river is the Seine. If you look on your map and just where I showed you where Paris was, there's a star right here on the map. That's the capital. That's Paris, capital of France. The Seine actually runs right through Paris. It is pronounced Seine, not Seine, if you've ever been to France. French don't like us very much sometimes anyways, and so if you mispronounce the name of that river, they're not going to be extremely happy with you. There's another one on this map that doesn't look the way it should. It doesn't look the way it's spelled. It doesn't sound the way it's spelled. The Loire River is also in France. You don't have to label that one because it's not on your map. We're not going to label the Po. We're not going to label the Tiber. We're not going to label the Tagus, which runs through Spain and Portugal. You are going to label this river, and this is the other one that doesn't sound that way. It looks like it should say Thames or Thames. This is actually the Thames River, the River Thames. Right on your map, when you find the UK, the city of London, it's right here. Okay, the Thames runs through London. It's one of their major rivers. If you watch the Summer Olympics this summer, the scene where David Beckham was coming up the river and all the fireworks were going off, he was coming up the River Thames. So that's kind of a reference for you. Okay, the Elbe River is a hard river on the map. It's not very hard to see because we had to draw it in. It's really dark. It looks like it's a border of the country. There's a little star right here on this side to your map. That's actually the city of Berlin, the capital of Germany. And the Elbe River starts here and again flows north towards the North Sea. It has a little hook on the end of it. That's how I remember it. To me, it kind of looks like a long arm. This looks like the elbow to me, so I remember that Elbe is the Elbow River. However you want to do it is fine. You don't have to know the Oder. You don't have to know the Vistula. You don't have to know the Dnieper. You don't have to know the Volga, the Don. You've already done all these in Russia. You don't have to know the Ebro. Okay, one thing I will point out to you, if you notice, there's a lot of maps on here or a lot of rivers on here that we didn't have you label. Probably the most important thing about that is just notice how much natural fresh water they have. Some of these rivers promoted a lot of interaction between different places, especially where there's no mountain barriers between them. So specifically the Rhine and the Danube allowed these countries to really interact and trade up and down them. They're kind of the lifeline of Europe's transportation and trade systems. Okay? The river systems in this case, they're really functional regions. The most important thing about them is they're navigable. They're able to get boats up and down them pretty easily. There's not waterfalls. They're not rocky. They're not shallow. So a lot of trade does go on that way. The Rhine River that you saw earlier is right here. Okay, connects Western Europe, all of these countries in Western Europe, like Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, Switzerland. The Danube, which is right here, connects Eastern Europe with the rest of Europe. Okay. And the Volga connects Russia to Western Russia. So they have some things and able to trade. Okay, and there's a picture of the Danube just to kind of get an idea how long it is. The Volga is technically the longest river in Europe. Okay. If you ever go to Europe, the Volga is where you'll see a lot of culture, a lot of history on the Danube River. It's a lot of castles up and down the rivers. A lot of cities located on the Danube River that are very important historically. And you kind of see in this background here, you see all the castles and the pretty bridges, and it's really beautiful. And if we can get the slide to go to the next one, that'd be nice. You are finishing up part 2 of the video. The next video segment will open up with a video about Belgium and the Netherlands. Okay, probably most of you are familiar with some things about Amsterdam and the Netherlands that aren't shown on this little video clip. We'll talk about those next time, some of the things that you probably have heard about Amsterdam and places like that. So be ready, get your video notes out, and be ready to answer the 2 questions about Belgium and the Netherlands.